Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings from MonaLaw at the University of the West Indies. My name is Ramona Biholar, and I'm the Deputy Dean for Graduate Studies and Research in the Faculty of Law. I'm very happy to welcome you all, colleagues, members of the UE community, graduate and undergraduate students, alumni, IP practitioners, members of the legal community to this second masterclass for this semester, which is part of the tradition of the MonaLaw Masterclass series, which we've started in 2019. Our masterclasses are public events in which we aim to share with you about the MonaLaw teaching and learning experience, fields of legal and interdisciplinary knowledge we explore through research and graduate teaching, with the hope to bring your attention and attract your interest to compelling ideas, discussions, emerging fields of legal research, and overall the programs we offer and the varied courses we teach. These masterclasses, like the one today, are also a platform to engage with thinkers and experts from outside the faculty who bring perspectives from practice and other disciplinary angles that are most beneficial to understanding the law. So far, our Faculty of Law has held masterclasses in nuclear law, procurement law, insolvency, company and corporate governance, international human rights law. Today's masterclass is dedicated to another interesting and evolving field of study, the intersection of intellectual property law, trade, agriculture, and culture, the field of geographical indications, also referred to GIs, which are powerful tools for protecting products whose quality, reputation, and identity are rooted in place. Across the Caribbean and the wider world, origin-linked products from Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee and Demerara rum to Trinidad Montserrat Hills cocoa, Grenada nutmeg, and St. Lucia sea moss tell stories of community, heritage, and innovation. Today, we invite you to join in discussing some aspects of GIs and give you a glimpse of this fascinating field in which the Faculty of Law has excellent expertise and offers the graduate level course titled Geographical Indications in the Global Market. This course, which has been designed by our MonaLaw colleague and expert in the area, Dr. Natalie Cortesi, combines doctrinal, policy, and practical dimensions, from understanding how GIs work in global trade to engaging directly with stakeholders such as JIPO, or Jamaica Intellectual Property Office, and JACRA, Jamaica Agricultural Commodities Regulatory Authorities, and producers networks. Our MonaLaw colleague, Dr. Yentel Williams, who has led the teaching of the course this semester, will give you more insights into the field of GIs. For now, I'd like to point out that not only that we are culminating the successful inaugural teaching of the course with this masterclass, but also today, discussion with JIPO and JACRA is especially timely as Jamaica recovers from Hurricane Melissa, which has had devastating impacts on agricultural communities. In this context, GIs are not only intellectual property tools, but strategic instruments for rebuilding rural livelihoods, strengthening value chains, and supporting long-term resilience. We have a distinguished panel today with various expertise in the areas of GIs, and we hope the discussions will deepen your understanding of how GIs can drive sustainable post-disaster recovery across the Caribbean, and will give you some invaluable insights and show the significance of a course on geographical indications for your legal studies or professional development goals. So I'm very happy to have on this panel Dr. Yentel Williams, lecturer here at the Faculty of Law and technical consultant on trade. She has published extensively in the area of GIs, and her doctoral research will soon be published as a book, Geographical Indications in International Trade towards Sustainable Development in the Caribbean. So look out for that publication. Dr. Williams has a decade of experience bridging academia, trade policy, and regional development. We also have two distinguished guests joining Dr. Williams in the discussions today. Ms. Lily Claire Bellamy, the Executive Director of JIPO, a graduate of Norman Manley Law School. She provides legal advice and guidance relating to IP laws, international relations, and issues related to trade in IP to ministries, departments, and agencies in the government. She has also been contributing to discussions on key issues affecting Jamaica IP laws, not only nationally, but also regionally and internationally. So welcome, Ms. Bellamy. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Wayne Hunter, the Acting Director General of JACRA, an agency dedicated to the regulation and promotion of Jamaica's agricultural commodities: coffee, cocoa, coconut, turmeric, nutmeg, ginger, and pimento. With 15 years of experience in leadership, Mr. Hunter has been instrumental in advancing JACRA's mission to ensure quality, sustainability, and global competitiveness of Jamaica's premium agricultural commodities. Welcome, Mr. Hunter, and thank you for joining us. With such an expert-based panel, I do think we can start the discussions. Dr. Williams will introduce first the innovative course on GIs that we offer here at MonaLaw, and we'll have a conversation with our guests on the importance of this field to knowledge, academia, communities, and the industry. Dr. Williams, you have the floor.
You're hearing me now? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for that warm introduction, Ramona. And as you mentioned, this is a wonderful way to complete this semester, the first semester of teaching the course, the Geographical Indications in the Global Marketplace at MonaLaw, the Professional Development and LLM module that we offer. So today I will give an overview of the course that we teach, and I will present it like a mini lecture for anyone that's online and still wondering what exactly are GIs. I hope to give you a taste of all the different elements of GIs, but then I also want to root my discussion in our current context in Jamaica, and that is considering geographical indications not only, as we have done already, as tools for sustainable development, but as a strategic tool for recovery post-Hurricane Melissa. And there I've just kept both titles just so that we recall the context within which we're working currently. So as I said, that will be the structure of my presentation tonight. I will also delve into some case studies, Demerara Rum, the Montserrat Hills Cocoa GI from Trinidad and Tobago. I will share some insights into the future of innovation and intellectual property with regard to Café de Colombia. And another exciting one I have there, so you have to stay on to hear that one. And then go into some of the course feedback that I got from students since officially teaching term ended last week. I always like to start my presentations on intellectual property with this picture. Now, for those of you who know the UK context, you might recognize it as Crystal Palace. And over the 1700s, there were multiple international expos showing different industrial developments and inventions, and those expos went all over the world. And from my accent, as you can hear, I grew up in London, so I'm very familiar with the Crystal Palace, and the structure remains standing today. It wasn't until I moved to Jamaica, totally by chance, at the Institute for Development downtown, that I saw a structure of a palace in Jamaica. And I was very pleased to find out that there had been an equivalent of a Crystal Palace here in Jamaica to showcase the international industrial developments in that time. The building does not exist today, but this story sheds light on the fact that although we don't have visual representations of industrial developments being shown in that epoch, it did happen here in Jamaica. There were expos of the level of Crystal Palace in the UK, detailing and explaining the potentials of industrial developments and industrial innovations. As an IP student in the UK, I was taught of that history and I knew it very well. However, in the Jamaican context, or the Caribbean context, sometimes it's hard to root those discussions since we don't have structures like this and we're unaware of the innovations and their linkage to our own history today. So one of the objectives of this course is to demonstrate how we can protect our own innovation and our own intellectual property through the unique subset of this IP, the Geographical Indication Law. Now, as I mentioned, it's very important to ground our discussion in where we're currently at in Jamaica, and that is we are recovering from Category 5 Hurricane Melissa. Already in our course outline, there's this nice quotation here from a GI scholar called Justin Hughes, who states, and I quote, "In considering how legal protection of geographical indications can be used to improve coffee and cocoa producers' incomes, we must not lose sight of the desired GI effect. Successful marketing that A, produces higher economic rents, and B, is controlled by or at least directly benefits farmers." So again, grounding geographical indications in sustainable development outcomes, higher economic rents, and control and benefit for farmers or producing communities. Now I'm going to play this reel here.
The genius again. We shall overcome. Shall overcome. Must overcome. We must overcome. That's it. So me a pray till Jah overcome. Me pray. To my God, the day you hurt our sky. For my friend that said them love me when me know them lie. Me pray for the gully youth, but I me know them cry. Babylon I shoot the down and them a tell me a lie. Me pray, cause rice and flour for buy. Can't depend on cassava that hard for fry. Now living on the old days that hard for try. Me ask my mama eat steak and that hard for buy. So we shall over.
So for those of you who might be tuning in from abroad and less aware of the context in Jamaica, we are facing utter destruction of the west of the island. And indeed, after that, it was very hard for me to take any pictures or any videos after that particular point in the video I shared. So this is the context that we're currently dealing with. And given that our masterclass was originally scheduled just before the hurricane and we had to reschedule it, it has provided us with actually a new lens within which we can actually think about geographical indications specifically in Jamaica's recovery process. And one of those, this lens actually challenges us to understand how geographical indications as tools for development can also support producer communities recover stronger, sustainably, with rents and control and benefit from the products that they produce. And now there's resonance of geographical indications with this context, as 70% of EU GIs actually come from economically deprived areas. So if we make that linkage there with the development impetus, geographical indications can serve us in this recovery period. So with everything, we have to know where we're coming from with geographical indications. And the course always begins by outlining what are GIs. So geographical indications, simply put, link the quality, reputation, and characteristics of a product with a specific geographical territory. So the famous examples are, of course, champagne can only be produced and exported from Champagne in France, tequila from Mexico, Darjeeling from India, and Ramona mentioned some of them we have in the region here. So in Jamaica, we have Jamaica Jerk that was registered in 2015, and Jamaica Rum registered in 2016. In Trinidad, we have Montserrat Hills Cocoa and the Steel Pan. So geographical indications can protect agro-food products and also craft products. We actually begin the course with the legal history, which goes as far back to the original intellectual property treaty which we refer is the Paris Convention for the Protection of Industrial Property. So I bring the students all the way through the different legal conventions, the Madrid Agreement, the Lisbon Agreement, up until the WTO TRIPS agreement that we have today, and demonstrate how this is thereafter enacted in our national laws. So on the screen, you can see the laws of Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica. And as you can see, it almost replicates verbatim the World Trade Organization TRIPS definition of geographical indications. I won't read it, it's on the screen there, but you can always come back to this as this video will be on YouTube. And again, it's very important to ground the discussion of why GIs could be a potentially beneficial tool for us in the Caribbean through this legal history. And here I put a quote by Marcus Garvey: "A people without the knowledge of their past, history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. We cannot address the law as it is today without looking at where it came from." And in this case, what we also interrogate are the European origins of the law and its viability for us today. So one of the elements I mentioned is considering geographical indications as a tool for sustainable development. And there we ground it in the UN definition of sustainable development, that is, development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And technology and social organization can be both managed and improved to make way for a new era of economic growth. So that is one where economic growth sits hand in hand with environmental considerations and concerns. Equally, I think it's relevant to reference thinkers from our own region. And here we have the quote from Frantz Fanon that every generation must find its mission and fulfill it or betray it. So with my work on geographical indications, this is my personal contribution and mission to understand how geographical indications can serve our region and benefit our producer communities in today's post-colonial epoch. I also put reference here to the book on affirming methodologies, which emphasizes the importance and value of Caribbean ways of being, knowing, and doing within academia. Hence, you will see throughout my slides references to our academics and thinkers. Now, moving on to a case study. The Demerara rum geographical indication was the first geographical indication from the Caribbean to be registered in the EU, and that is significant. And again, with understanding how it came to be the first, I also want to give an overview of where we have come from. So I really like this map. It details the Demerara River in the 1700s, and it also shows the proliferation of colonial commerce around that river for the purposes of sugar production. So in the 1700s, there were over 300 sugar plantations as part of the colonial expedition in Guyana. Today, if this was an interactive class, I'd ask, how many are there today? Today, there's just one. We know the history of the decline of sugar and how that industry has changed. Europe, from being a net importer of sugar from our region, actually has become now an net exporter of beet sugar. Nonetheless, Demerara Distillers Limited has a distillery and produces sugar on that around the banks of the river, and they have maintained and developed the geographical indication for Demerara rum, which is first registered in Guyana and now the first Caribbean GI registered within the EU. So that overview just contextualizes where we've come from, but then also makes us question and think about our regions today, and that move from what Beckford calls, at that time, it would have been the plantation economy, and how we can really take control of our own agricultural production in the region today with the use of intellectual property. So today, of course, we have the Demerara rum registered at the EU level. And here are some excerpts that I pulled from the specification, which demonstrate that confluence of heritage, natural factors, and art and the science of distillation by traditional methods, equipment and human expertise, and how that links with the character and quality of Demerara rums, as well as their reputation. So the specification also details that the rum has been produced for more than 300 years as an artisanal rum. And for more than 200 years, it has been supplied to the British Royal Navy for daily rations to sailors. So with any rum, any GI specification, there's always a very interesting story that links the quality, reputation, and characteristic of the product with the area it comes from. This is a demonstration of the Demerara rum geographical indication. Trinidad and Tobago now has the first ever GI in the Caribbean region for cocoa. So Montserrat Hills cocoa was registered by the Montserrat Hills Cooperative in a locality, a region within Trinidad. So not an entire geographical indication for the entire territory, but rather the territory of Montserrat Hills in Trinidad. And there is ample scope for GI peer-to-peer learning. So I will show you that there are other geographical indications possible for cocoa across our region. And I bring this example just to say that as we develop our own GIs, we ought to learn from each other how we are developing the GIs, what is registered, how the linkages are drawn between the quality characteristics and reputation, and so on. So therefore, we can ask ourselves, even in this context in Jamaica or wherever you as an audience may be, what could be the next GI in the region you come from? So I've put a few on the screen here. Jamaican black castor oil, Jamaican ginger, Jamaican Scotch bonnet. And now what I'm very excited to show you is the possibility of GIs. So by no means is this meant to be a legible list, but these are 64 possible GIs that could be registered in Jamaica alone. So this list was made up by the government of Jamaica in consultation with private sector within the framework of the EU Caribbean Forum Economic Partnership Agreement. So that's the free trade agreement governing the trading relations, including on intellectual property between the EU and Caribbean states, including where we're at in Jamaica. So just to name a few, I've highlighted a few, but you could again come back and refer to this list. There's Jamaican Scotch bonnet, Jamaican cocoa, Jamaican Ortonique, Middle Quarter shrimp, Jamaican ginger, Jamaican cannabis, Jamaican bauxite, Castleton clay, Jamaican thatch, Blue Mountain coffee, Jamaican High Mountain coffee, Catherine's Peak water, Jamaican wellness products, St. Elizabeth Hodges clay, Sissel, St. Elizabeth scallion and thyme, and the list goes on. And if you would like to do any specific reading on cannabis, for example, my co-lecturer and co-designer of the course, Dr. Natalie Cortesy, and I, alongside our colleague, Professor Enrico Bonadio, produced this book on the top right-hand corner on intellectual property and cannabis. So there we detail more on the case of cannabis, and specifically there's a chapter in it that I authored on geographical indications for Jamaican cannabis, Jamaican ganja, and Jamaican hemp. So you can take a look at that. Now, this is the list for the remaining CARIFORUM countries. And again, I'm sure many of you are listening in from different regions all over the world and our own region in the Caribbean. And you can see here some of the lists that exist of possible geographical indications that could be registered across the Caribbean region. So the CARIFORUM is the CARICOM and Dominican Republic. So you'll see here so many items from honey to peppers to Calinego craft, rum, cigars, mango, different oils, different fruits. There's some terms that I'm not even aware of in English. You see again Demerara rum, Demerara sugar, Demerara molasses. So the list here is extensive, and I'm very keen to engage with those of you who want to discuss any of them further after this. You can feel free to get in touch. But one of the things I always ask the students is to consider if there's anything that's not on the list. So that's been a very exciting part of the course this year, that we've come up with, the students, in fact, have come up on their own with items that they think should be added to lists. So it may be time that actually we might need to revise these lists and consider projects going forward to register additional geographical indications in our region. And just an overview of where we're at globally is that we can see that on the left-hand side here, that Asia and Europe really dominate with geographical indication registrations. Both regions have thousands of registrations, whereas I just mentioned a few of them we have in the region, 2 in Jamaica, 2 in Trinidad. St. Lucia rum was recently registered, and Guyana, of course, has Guyana Demerara rum, Demerara sugar. So our region has a lot fewer registrations, although as you've seen from that list, we have a huge potential in terms of registering our products with geographical indications. And we know that they can bring premiums for our producers. So the premiums, some of them documented in the literature, range from 20% for, this is for cheese producers in Europe, and more. And as you can see, so now the top right graph there, wines are the top GI registrations, followed by fruits, vegetables, cereals. So fruits, vegetables, cereals, we have that in our region. Then fresh animal products, spirits, cheese, vegetable-based fibers, and textiles. And I know in teaching the course this year that handicrafts were of very keen interest with our students. And just lastly, with this last graph here, just to show that, of course, standalone geographical indication law is the most popular way of protecting the geographical indication, although, as we have also taught in the class, that there are other ways, including trademarks or with other acts. Now, a part of GIs I find very interesting is I want to share with you a personal story that speaks to the potential of geographical indications in our region. And this is one of Café de Colombia, one of the oldest geographical indications coming from the global south, or developing country context, if we'd like to call it that. And it's a story about Colombian coffee farmers who have been organizing cooperatives, coming together with the government and working as a public-private partnership to brand Café de Colombia, Colombian coffee. So the Juan Valdez was designed as the image of the everyday Colombian coffee farmer, and the government, in collaboration with a coffee cooperative, has built out a number of stores and commercial enterprises called the Juan Valdez Coffee Chain, particularly around the US, that sells specifically Café de Colombia. So as a lover of GIs myself, if I'm in an area that sells, that has a Juan Valdez coffee shop, I will definitely choose to buy a GI coffee over another coffee. And on the right here, this is what happened. So in Miami Airport, I know there's a Juan Valdez, and I was meeting my sister as she was flying back to Jamaica, and I was flying out to a meeting to discuss the economic partnership agreement between the EU and the CARI Forum. And I said, let's meet at Juan Valdez. So I took this picture, very happy that I can buy my Juan Valdez geographical indication coffee in Miami Airport. And when I posted it to Instagram and tagged Juan Valdez Cafe, I automatically got a response from Juan Valdez Instagram, responding saying, "Hi, thank you for buying a Juan Valdez coffee. Every time you enjoy one of our coffees, you are supporting 548 Colombian coffee families." And I thought that this is such a powerful message. And being that I'm based in Jamaica, I thought, wow, how powerful would that be if visitors to our island, if Jamaicans themselves, if we know that when we're buying, for example, a Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee, we're supporting how many ever thousands or hundreds of Jamaican coffee farmers. So just to give this example, this could be any geographical indication. Any geographical indication can communicate in such a way with their audience to demonstrate that linkage, that your money is going directly to a producer group that produces a geographical indication, intellectual property protected agricultural product. And there are so many more cases like this. And indeed, I go through in the class. There's the Indian Basmati case, which is very nice to show how the Indian diaspora are very strong and forthright in protecting their heritage products. The Mexican tequila case, which we can learn lessons from in terms of it also being one of the oldest GI and how it remains protected in Mexico today. And then more recently, there is work to be done, in fact, in our region to really make that connection of the economic return for producer communities. So in the Parma region of Italy that produces Parma ham and Parmigiano Reggiano cheese, also known as Parmesan cheese, the Parmesan geographical indication can be used by the producer group as collateral for loans. So here we see that an intellectual property tool, this geographical indication, can be a very powerful tool for sustainable development, economic development, as well as rural development. And now, just to give you a brief overview of our course and how it's scheduled, you can see here that we have the introduction to GIs in the global market. As I mentioned, the legal history of this subset of IP law, so situating geographical indications in international law. And then we complement that with practical insights into GIs. This year we had a training for agro producers with Helen's Daughters. That is a women's agricultural network based in St. Lucia that has now expanded across the Eastern Caribbean states. So this year our class actually met with 150 female farmers across St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, St. Kitts and Nevis, and discussed geographical indications, the challenges and opportunities practically for these women producers. And these are some of the geographical indications that we discussed there on the right-hand side of the screen. We would have had this masterclass, now it's rescheduled to this week. We discussed geographical indications within the framework of the EU CARIFORUM Economic Partnership Agreement, and also how geographical indications are protected in the old world, that's the EU, versus the new world, the US, and that geographical indications can be protected by trademarks, although we discussed the nuances and the differences and the advantages of protecting it via a standalone sui generis legal system. We conclude the classes with case studies, as some that I mentioned, the Caribbean rum, tequila, basmati, Café de Colombia, amongst others. And the final week is a really nice interactive week whereby students search for their own geographical indication that they're interested in writing their assessment on in different international IP databases. So students get a very practical insight of when a geographical indication is registered or a trademark, how they can search for it. Just in terms of now some information on the feedback to the course for anyone who is interested in joining the course, we've had a mix of both LLM students and professional students since the course is open to anyone, whether you are an LLM student or you're coming in via the professional development route. And as you can also see that there were 40% of the class was not familiar with geographical indications. The other 40 was somewhat familiar, and the last remaining 20% heard of it but wasn't sure about it. And on the far left and far right corners there, you also see I took some pictures from the slides that we were discussing throughout class. So you can make reference to that as we go along, looking at the students' feedback. I'm very pleased with the students' perception that the course was considered effective, with the majority considering the course very effective. And 100% of the students from this semester's course thought that geographical indications were important for Caribbean development and trade. And 100% of the students also would recommend this course to other students or professionals. So I did include some of the references here, which I will just refer to briefly before we conclude, which is one student said, "This course has opened my eyes to the world of geographical indicators, and now I find myself questioning which products can be registered as a GI and how GI protection can influence economies and safeguard culture and traditions." Another student said, "This course made me realize how deeply GIs connect to identity and community. It sparked a real interest in how Jamaica can protect the foods and tradition I grew up in." Another student said, "This course has significantly increased my awareness of and appreciation for geographical indications as a unique and somewhat untapped economic pathway for developing countries like Jamaica to capitalize on its history and cultural identity." And one student, as they recognize here, has even developed an academic proposal to work on geographical indications further since attending this course. For any of you who would like to read more on geographical indications, you can go to my SSRM page, where I have recent work available that we also discuss in class about the different linguistic and jurisdictional nuances of geographical indications. That is across the English, French, and Spanish-speaking Caribbean, as well as an interrogation of geographical indications as a form of reparative justice. And I always like to conclude that I always share with my students that it's very important to find your expertise, pursue your passions, and never give up on your dreams. And I'm very pleased that my students have expressed that geographical indications are now part of their passions. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll hand over to you, Lily Claire, to share from your perspective.
Thanks so much, Chantel. That was really fascinating. You touched on a number of things I wanted to share, but I found it so coincidental that you mentioned the Crystal Palace. And while we might not have any structures in Jamaica that reflect Crystal Palace, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the movement for Girl Guides and Girl Scouts actually started at Crystal Palace. There was a Boy Scout rally in 1909, and a number of girls stormed the palace, indicating to Baden-Powell that they were dressed as scouts and said they were Girl Scouts. So he asked his sister Agnes, and himself and his sister started Girl Guides in 1910 in the UK, and Girl Guides started in Jamaica in 1915. So, and we're still here. So, I mean, Crystal Palace still resonates, and most Girl Guides know Crystal Palace. So when you started with that, I was like, wow. But geographical indications and the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office, we can move, Ishmael. The Jamaica Intellectual Property Office, we are an agency of the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. And people wonder sometimes, why is an intellectual property office located in a ministry that is basically a business ministry? You mentioned in your presentation the WTO TRIPS agreement. And that WTO TRIPS agreement signaled the importance and relevance of intellectual property as a tool, a trade tool. So it's we're located, I think, in the right ministry, because we basically are here to help facilitate business. JIPO is one of 20 agencies that falls under that ministry, and our minister is Senator the Honorable Aubin Hill, and we now have a Minister of State with Honorable Delana Seabright, who is a Member of Parliament also. JIPO is responsible for the administration of intellectual property laws in Jamaica, and intellectual property laws include industrial property laws and copyright and related rights. So under the area of industrial property, we would have designs, geographical indications, patents, utility models, and then we have copyright and related rights. So when you merge both of them together, you get intellectual property rights. So at JIPO, we have responsibility for the registration of every form of intellectual property, and we also offer a voluntary registration of copyright. And that arose because when we told persons your copyright is automatic, you have an original work, once you put it in a tangible format, your copyright automatically comes into existence. The response would be, that's all? Nothing, no paper? Because in Jamaica, we love our paper and our certificates. So we would tell them about poor man's copyright, and people will be like, really? That's all? So in response to the request from our public, we created a voluntary registration. So instead of the poor man's copyright, now they get a certificate, and persons are really very happy with that. All right, can we move? But I think in light of what the presentation that you did, Yantel, and given that I have 7 to 10 minutes, I'm going to skip through quite a few of my slides just so that we can get into the questions and answers. So if I could move to number 13, if that's possible. Because I was going to look at the TRIPS agreement, but you dealt with that, so I don't need to deal with that. But I just want to share that the recognition of the government of Jamaica of the importance of geographical indications. The TRIPS agreement in Articles 22 and 23 give 2 layers of protection for geographical indications. If it's a wine and spirit, it has a higher level of protection than if it is a good. Well, we amended our Protection of Geographical Indication Act to say whether it is a wine or it is Jamaica jerk, it should have the same level of protection as a wine, because we thought that in our region, we primarily produce not wines and spirits, but we primarily, as you showed from your list, it's predominantly other goods and handicraft, and we think that they are as important as wines and spirits. So somebody shouldn't be able to basically benefit economically from our products by calling it Jamaica, like Jamaica jerk, similar to Jamaica jerk, type of Jamaica jerk. So we recommended, and our law has been amended to say that it is the same Article 22 protection. We have that for all of our products, which I thought was important and significant. We can move on, please. So as you mentioned, we have a long list of locally produced goods. They're distinctive, and a lot of it is tied with our history and our traditions. And this is an excellent opportunity. And Melissa has demonstrated why we need to really be resilient and to rely on what we produce. I know a number of persons will say, oh, we can't produce in large quantities. But it doesn't matter if you can't produce it in a large quantity, because what you're doing is you're going for a distinctive niche market. And there are examples. In Europe, for example, there's a salt that is produced. And those specialty salts comprise a small portion of the market. But there are persons who will only use, as you mentioned with the example of the coffee, there are people who will only purchase geographical indication products. So we have the reputation. We have a very strong brand out there. Jamaica has a very strong and distinctive brand, and a number of our sister states in the Caribbean, persons associate certain products with them, like the black belly sheep. We associate that with Barbados. So persons will purchase because it comes from that area. So I think that's something we shouldn't think, oh, we can't make a difference because we're too small. You had mentioned, and in my next slide, a number of potential geographical indications. Our castor oil, the work on our castor oil is far advanced in terms of having castor oil as a geographical indication. And if now you go into a store and you look, you will see quite a number of products that are suggesting they're Jamaican black castor oil. But once you turn over and you read the label, you will see that it has nothing to do with Jamaica. When we have our geographical indication for Jamaican black castor oil, then we will have a voice to be able to say, this is not an authentic product and you cannot be distributing it and pretending and basically deceiving the public into believing that they're receiving a product that has certain unique and distinct characteristics that that product does not have. You mentioned about the ganja. I must share with you that when we shared that list, it caused such a kerfuffle because I had never seen a ganja plant when I recommended that it go on the list, and everybody was like, oh, you can't do that. And I said, why not? We have had research that was done because this was before ganja was decriminalized, that this was placed on the list. And we had the historical precedence of two pharmaceutical products that had been produced from ganja. And if we could have done that when it was a criminal offense, then I didn't see why we couldn't have it as a geographical indication. And time has passed and we now have the decriminalization. We have the Cannabis Licensing Authority, which is another agency of the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. So that also allows for a close working relationship between the Intellectual Property Office and the Cannabis Licensing Authority. And we actually are in discussions with them regarding the application for them for a GI for ganja. We have ginger and we have jackfruit present. We have also in Jamaica, we have fine grade cocoa, which is another potential geographical indication. We have our Scotch bonnet pepper, and you listed, I mean, that list was quite exhaustive and it took some time to get that list together. But now we have the list. What we need is actually persons to go the next step. So I'm hoping perhaps one of your students will take up the mantle, because getting the geographical indication is not that difficult. It just needs the time and the focus to agree that this is what you're supposed to do. This is how you can do it. And they have now the opportunity to learn about how to go about getting a geographical indication. And the Protection of Geographical Indications law, it's a simple law. It's quite clear. And it has all the forms in there telling you what you need to do. And we are available to do presentations. We can't guide you because we're going to be the ones who will assess it, but we can share information with you, because one of the focuses of the Intellectual Property Office here in Jamaica is the provision of public education. In my next slide, I had shared, which you mentioned. I found it so coincidental that everything I mentioned, you mentioned. I was looking at Guyana with the Demerara products that are registered as geographical indications, the coffee from Colombia, and that story of Juan Valdez is such a fascinating story. The first time I heard it, because until I heard that story, I thought Juan Valdez was actually someone, and he's not. It was a creation. I mean, the whole image of the Juan Valdez and the donkey, that's how you build on the brand. So you just see that and you went, that's the coffee I want. You don't even have to know the name or where it's from. The whole image is what draws you to it. Then we have tequila from Mexico, which is a spirit, and Trinidad and Tobago. They have the Montserrat Hills cocoa, and they also have a chocolate bar, which is really lovely. So we have examples in the Americas. I also, on my next slide, I chose Darjeeling tea because I'd been to India, and persons think of India and they think of people. When I think of India, I think of the vegetation, because when you see the rows and rows of tea growing, and I mean, this is a fantastic, fascinating tea. And the power of a geographical indication is that no one else can produce a tea and call it Darjeeling. It has to come from India. And you have that distinctive logo with the woman holding the tea leaf. The next one now is the European geographical indications, which we're also familiar with, which I show in my next slide, because in Jamaica, I should recognize and acknowledge the work of the Swiss Federal Institute for Intellectual Property, because they did a project with the government of Jamaica in 2009. And it is out of that project that we ended up with 2 geographical indications. We were trying for a third, but we didn't get the geographical indication for the third. But as you mentioned, you can also protect a geographical indication with a collective mark, and that product is protected with a collective mark. If we look at the next slide, we will see France, which is famous for its champagne and other geographical indications. Switzerland, there's a Gruyere cheese, there's Portugal, and they're famous for their wine. And you mentioned Parma ham. Again, because these are so synonymous with GIs, you think of them and it's amazing. The next slide shows the region of Champagne, because when I explain to people that Champagne is a geographical indication, but the grapes have to be grown in that red region. If the vines are not from that region, then it cannot be Champagne. So the white sparkling wine must come from that tiny region. And it's the same in our jurisdiction. For example, the story of Demerara. The name is linked with a specific geographical region. So you can't, in Jamaica, we couldn't have Demerara sugar because we don't have a Demerara region. So I think it's something, the advantages that a geographical indication can provide. Basically, it gives you a right. I mean, intellectual property, just like intellectual property gives the owner or the creator the right. So the geographical indication enables you to have the right to prevent a third party from using your product. And to have a law in place makes it easier because there are penalties in the law. So it's not without. And we have in recent years gone to court for a number of intellectual property rights matters. So it's not like you won't have an opportunity if someone should infringe on your GI, you do have an avenue. So we have especially in this century, there has been a push towards the whole area of gastronomy, and people are more into food and, want to be able to show that they have distinctive palates. And so the GIs are really something that is topical, but apart from being topical, this is something that has existed for centuries. Champagne has been around forever. We have in our region, we have Havana cigars, okay? Those come from tobacco. The distinctive flavor, I mean, I know there are laws about smoking, but just to recognize how the soil plays an important role in the essence of what you produce is important. It also with a geographical indication, because it is so important for you to be able to maintain where the product comes from. It addresses environmental issues, which are very important and very critical. So we have the traditional knowledge that we all take for granted. There are things that we know that we don't even recognize as traditional knowledge because it is so ingrained in us. But that tradition is associated with how we grow, how we reap, and how we produce our products. And that story is what distinguishes your product and allows it to be a geographical indication. If you don't have a GI law, as I mentioned, there are other options that you can use. You can use the Trademark Act because you can get a certification mark that says you have to do certain things to be able to have the designation. So again, that is a layer of protection. Though, like you, I'm biased towards the geographical indications. So I think, okay, the next one I want to, if we could go to 27, because 27 shows how easy it is for someone to get involved in the geographical indication arena. So any interested party, right? It's so any person, a producer, a manufacturer, or a merchant engaged in the production or manufacture or trading goods and established in the locality. So anybody, so if you're a producer, let's say the University of the West Indies, let's locate it there. University of the West Indies is well known for producing the UA plant, and it blooms once a year. And from that flower, you get, you produce a liquid, and that liquid reverses aging, okay? So it's the UA flower. So everybody knows that UA flower, but it can only grow on the University of the West Indies Mona campus. So nobody else, you're the producer. So the plant is growing there. And then you say to the principal, we have a group and we are going to be responsible for ensuring that when the flower blooms, we will harvest it, we will produce this fluid. Only 5 flowers are produced, so you only get 5 ounces of that liquid. Can you imagine how much you could sell that liquid for if it can reduce aging? And that is the power of a geographical indication. Everybody wouldn't be able to get it, but everybody would want it. But the thing is, you would have to ensure that the code of practice, so you say it must be picked when the moon is full. It cannot be picked at a new moon. It must be picked at the full moon. It must dry by the sun. It can't be dried in an oven. So you stipulate the conditions and you ensure that all of those conditions are met. So somebody down at the bowl might be growing the Mona flower, but they decide that they don't want to pick it at the full moon. They wouldn't be able to get the GI designation because they're not following the terms and conditions to get the GI. So, I mean, it's complex, but it is simple. But it takes work and it takes time. And I would encourage anyone who is interested in this area, they can reach out to us because we're willing to provide information. And I think the CARIFORM Economic Partnership Agreement, which exists, there's a huge export potential there. So there's a market there that is totally and completely untapped. It is ready and waiting, and we are not utilizing it. And I think it is important for us to really act quickly to make use of what is available, because the reality is, and we've seen it recently, if there are treaties in existence and they make provisions, okay, and nobody's utilizing the treaties, then they're going to take them back. Because if it is there and you're not using it, why do we need to have it? So I think what we need to do is to utilize what is there. So we have these treaties available for our use. I think we should use them. we have the products, we have the added value, we have the distinctiveness. People find our region attractive, which is why so many tourists come. So we have an open market. I think in addition to our well-known brands, we could become known as producers of geographical indications. So we would ride on the reputation of our existing reputation along with the geographical indications. Thank you so much. I think I took my 7 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Williams and Lily Claire Bellamy. Lily Claire, we have a number of things to talk about after this.
We do.
Yeah. Yeah. But can I just say that I believe from my perspective, it is, ditto, ditto, ditto. Because some of what Yentil has talked about, and now I see that Lily Claire yourself has tapped into that, and some of it I'm carrying as well, but primarily from the law side. There is one thing that I'll say before I begin is that as a PhD student, I wish I, knew more about GI before. Otherwise, I would definitely would have studied, more of GI in Jamaica. Well, here we go. Jackcraw. As we always, run into it, when Jackcraw is a big name, what do you do there? Well, Jackcraw is an agency of government under the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, and we're responsible for promoting, regulating, and improved production, as well as facilitating trade over the 7 commodities that we have regulatory framework for. Those are coffee, cocoa, coconut, and the spices. And the spices are so labeled: pimento, nutmeg, ginger, and turmeric. And then you could take to the next slide. What is our purpose? Well, we are established to improve competitiveness, of Jamaica's agricultural sector by ensuring high quality production and protecting the reputation of the nationally significant commodities. And this is important because, sufficient to my mind, this is where we should tap into GI. Now, I was a part of a team. Well, I was a representative that went to India setting standards for pimento. And I remember clearly having the room being introduced when it was time for pimento. Most of the countries, for example, the echo across the room began with it begins with the US, then Canada, then it spreads, and said, this is where we allow our brother from Kingston, Jamaica to take the floor. Because pimento is so unique, and only if we were able to tap into the GI of it, then we would see greater value. And so if the standards were set for example, 2 millimeters for a bean, it is 3 for Jamaica. That means Jamaica would could ask for a higher price on the international market for the sale of the pimento berries. Similarly, for the ground pimento, it was the same as well. So there are significant benefits that we can tap into. We represent the country in Madagascar in 2023. We sat before a panel on several other countries who were defending their fine flavor status. Jamaica came away with our fine flavor status. I was one of two members from JACRA who represented Jamaica at that meeting. At the time in 2023, Jamaica was one of 10 countries in the world with fine flavor status. And that is the reason why I am pushing now for cocoa to take the lead at this time. I could go on and on. Ginger is one that we have been looking at recently with FAO and with the United States Department for Food. Our ginger, based on preliminary research from the Rutgers University, it is 4 times more potent than other ginger that was researched along with it for the potency. One aspect of it that is looked at is Jamaican ginger. When you take a Jamaican sweet, the ginger ale, for example, and when you put it in your mouth and you have cold, it burns the throat. And when you do that in your sorrel or a ginger beer, it burns the throat. So there are distinct flavor of it that needs to be protected. And finally, everybody know about Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee. The biodiversity in the area is second to none. It's not found anywhere else in the world. Nowhere else in the world you find that kind of biodiversity in the that is currently in the Blue Mountain area. Can you take me to the next slide, Ishmael? So with that being said, here are the functions. Regulate quality, production, trade of that. We support our farmers. And the big thing for us is protecting brands and GI indications, such as I said before, the Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee. It is important to ensure that we comply with industry standards and export requirements. These are something that we pride ourselves in. As a part of our vision statement would say that we wish to be recognized on the world stage for quality and standards. Next slide. So I don't have to go into this because Yentil has already gone there. Taking to the next one. Perspective on geographical indication in law. Having looked at geographical indications, it's a very powerful legal and economic tool. That, might I say, that there are several untapped areas. Now, that in that tool is used for protecting culturally significant products, enhancing market value and preserving traditional knowledge. And I think this is where it hit home for me, because I don't believe that traditional knowledge is being preserved. So with that, down the bottom, it says, for nations, especially those with distinctive agricultural products, like Jamaica, strong GI legislation is essential for the sustaining authenticity, preventing imitation, and promoting long-term economic development. Now, preventing imitations is something that JACRA is big on. For example, the Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee is registered in over 90 countries in the world. because we must protect it. And whenever there are infringement, it is dealt with very, very swiftly. When I travel, I could travel to Japan, which is the largest importer of Jamaican coffee. When I travel to Japan, when I travel to Africa, to the US, to Canada, to anywhere I travel, one of the things that I tend to do is to go into the stores and have a look at the labels of the coffee that is in there. And then I would take photograph of them and I will send them back to my legal department. So my legal department could send this to the contracted lawyers in respective countries for an assessment, because we pride ourselves in that. Now, y'all mentioned of the TRIP agreement. It's true. You have Article 22, which defines as a basic protection. And then you have Article 23 that give a much stronger, it has more teeth. Well, to me, specifically for wine and spirit. And then you have the Geneva Act of the Lipson agreement there. These are some of the laws that we could use and share with our people. Indication in law. Most countries have specific laws, as Lily Claire has mentioned. The trademark. We've used the trademark to protect the Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee. Next slide. The importance of education on GI, significant. And I wish to say that whoever developed the concept to include GI in the curriculum at the University of the West Indies, smart thinking. Based on the cursory research that I did to prepare for this session, and just for my own, it is super relevant. So what we are facing with today is an increasingly important component of IP law, trade policy, and economic development, especially in a region like ours, the Caribbean. That's why it is prudent for the Norman Manley Law School to incorporate GI education in its curriculum. And it is my view, based on studies or based on research, it is highly relevant and strategically beneficial for several reasons. And I put two here. One, lawyers trained, and that is the purview of the MonaLaw School. And they are now needed to train in GI laws. And that is relevant to protect the products and ensure compliance with GI regulations, fighting counterfeit, and support export growth. Another one is that the MonaLaw School has a responsibility to prepare lawyers for new areas of regional economic opportunities, right? And GI law is one of the fastest growing way that I think that the importance of education, of educating ourselves on geographical indication. Okay, take me to the next one. Now we look at the importance of society to study law and intellectual property. What we're facing with today is modern societies, especially developing and creative economies, again, like the Caribbean. Studying law and IP it's not just for, it's not just, as we would say, for beneficial, but it is essential. Promote justice, drive innovation, protect culture. And this is one of the big things for me, protect the culture. Now, when one think of GI, it's a mark or a specific location, that community, the culture in that community must be protected and preserved. Once that is done, you can expect it to boost economic development. For example, one thing I can quickly think of, when you think of a compound area, we have ginger up there, and we plant turmeric up there as well. Those ginger and turmeric that are planted in that area come out at a you get bigger rhizome as opposed to another area, for example, in St. Thomas. Those things need to be protected. When that is done, what we have done in all of that is to equip the citizens of that community. This society must understand the law as well, which would, in my view, empower them and create sustainable long-term growth. So it is important for our society to understand what GI law and intellectual property is all about. Can you take me to the next slide? So what are the implications of GI for the industry? It offers powerful advantages to the industry. Premium price, for example, Jamaica Blue Mountain Coffee. It's a premier product. If you wish to consume a premier product, then you should also want to pay a premier price for it. The Versace bag, I don't know, but it may be a premier product, but I am certain that it is a product that our ladies are quite fascinating about, and they pay for it. Global recognition, enhanced quality. The quality of Jamaica Blue Mountain Coffee, again, is second to none because of the process to ripen the berries in the Blue Mountain area. It's much slower than anywhere else. In Jamaica, we have the Jamaica Blue Mountain Coffee and the Jamaica High Mountain Coffee. The High Mountain Coffee is produced anywhere else outside of the Blue Mountain. Now, let me just say that coffee is grown in every parish in Jamaica except for Kingston. And the reason for that is that because the water table is low in Kingston. So the elevation must be at a certain level. Now, the slow ripening of it enhance the quality, which then brings out the true flavor profile of the product, and that's why it is important. So we must protect it. Increase export potential. Yeah, everybody wants a taste of it, and everybody wants some of our cocoa as well. We sent 2 officers to Amsterdam this year, February, and we don't have enough cocoa to sell because of a cocoa disease, which is called the frosty pod rot. But we have chocolatiers who are clamoring for our chocolate because it is what Cadbury use in theirs, because again of the flavor profile. We have several chocolatiers here who have won several awards just by mixing our cocoa and making their chocolates available. At time, they bring responsibility such as strict compliance. And yes, strict compliance is important. We must adhere to the rules. Although this may position another way, but we all need to maintain high standards. We cannot afford to go away from that. Overall, the implications of GI for the industry are largely positive. and can transform local sectors into globally competitive, culturally significant, and economically sustainable industries. Can you take me to the next slide? The importance of GI for the industry. Did I look at this already? Can you take me to the next one? Oh, okay. So the importance of GI for the industry is it is essential for the industries that rely on unique regional products, such as Jamaica, again, for all of our commodities, traditional knowledge, cultural branding, and understanding GI law, economics, and management will help the industries to protect their identity, and the identity is of again that community, and that community is significant. And by improving that or protecting their identity, improve their competitiveness and secure long-term sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the panelists, Mr. Hunter, Ms. Bellamy, Dr. Williams. We've learned so much about local products compared to other products globally. I mean, of course, we know about the Blue Mountain coffee and the Jamaican cocoa, Jamaican ginger, but especially how all of these stand out. I think you've all made engaging with the field of GI is truly compelling and relevant for Jamaica and the Caribbean. And it is more so reassuring to hear from practitioners also about the relevance of a graduate level course on GIs and that we are teaching here at the Faculty of Law. And I hope this will also attract the interest of students, undergrad, graduate, as well as those who are interested in professional development. So I would now like to open the floor for questions and answer section. I would invite the audience to ask their questions. So please note your questions in the chat and we're going to pick them up. And I will break the ice by asking a couple of questions. I mean, this discussion really opened my interest in so many ways. And I have a question for all of you, and I will ask Dr. Williams to follow on your students' accounts that you shared in your presentation. What do you hope students and stakeholders to take away from a course on GIs and also from a discussion like today, both intellectually and practically? And I will also pose my question for both Ms. Bellamy and Mr. Hunter. And Ms. Bellamy, you mentioned that some products wrongly appropriate some names, like the Jamaican black castor oil. And I think I've seen such products, and I wonder, and I want to ask both you and Mr. Hunter, because he also mentioned the law and the standards. What happens when such products are found? What is it done from our agencies in Jamaica? So I will ask these questions for you to answer, and then I have another question from the audience, and also inviting some of our other members of the audience to ask questions. But maybe we can start there with answers. So who wants to start with first?
I'm happy to share from the perspective of the course. And for us, we really want students to, one, know what geographical indications are, and then two, consider their potential for their national territories and export. And what I can say is that once someone is introduced to geographical indications, they cannot not see geographical indications all around them. So from the very first course, students came back every week saying, "Oh, miss, we saw we saw this, can this be a GI? Or Miss, my grandmother has this story and I never thought about it this way before, but that can be protected in law. So for me, what is very enriching and heartwarming to see is how practical this topic is and how easily actually that students from different backgrounds and with different interests actually engage with this niche area of intellectual property. And I can say some students did come in at the beginning saying, Miss, we're quite intimidated by intellectual property. But by the end, these very students were like, this is our area of IP. We love this area. So these were very moving accounts and evolutions on the part of the students. And I would say we also do something which, Ramona, you taught me, is to keep a journal. So this case was a GI journal. And I have to say, students loved keeping a journal. And I did also throughout the course, as I do with GIs. And it was so useful. And many of them said how much they enjoyed keeping that journal every week and noting all the different geographical indications that they started to see around them. From, I see that someone in the chat asked, is chocolate a GI? So if you're asking about the Jamaican context, it's not yet registered as a GI, but as both presentations demonstrated, it can be a GI. And especially in our region, we are blessed to have this fine cocoa grade of chocolate hair, which would be ideal for a geographical indication. And maybe just another little anecdote before I hand it over, but I got into GIs because I was born in Trinidad, grew up in London and Europe, and I was very lucky throughout my life to be going between both regions, but I was always fascinated and questioning, why is it we say Belgian chocolate or Swiss chocolate, but I've never seen a cocoa tree growing in Europe, but the chocolate is recognized as having a reputation from these places due to the process of manufacture. So I would say from an early age and curiosity and starting being aware of everything that's around me, and as Wayne mentioned, looking at labels all the time, this is how I got to where I'm at. And I'm just pleased that with this first edition of the GI law module, that I can see that that interest is also now instilled in the students, and I'm very happy with that. So I think it was Lily Claire, you mentioned perhaps there'll be some students to work on this. I certainly have 5 to send your way.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. So yes, Ms. Bellamy, Mr. Hunter, what would be the answer to my question about appropriation, wrong appropriation of...
Well, I've moved away so that you can see the sign behind me. This is actually the geographical indications logo. So if you make an application to the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office to have a product registered as a geographical indication, this logo will be affixed to your product. So, for example, in Jamaica Jerk, if you've ever bought a bottle of Eaton's, EATONS, they are a member of the Jamaica Jerk Producers Association, and they have the logo on their product. So that signals to the world that it is a registered geographical indication. So if someone has a product out there and they are suggesting that it is Jamaica Jerk, a member of the Jamaica Jerk Producers Association could initiate an action against them for falsely suggesting that their product fits and adheres to the specifications to have the geographical indication designation. The challenge we have now is with the castor oil from Jamaica is that no producer or group of producers has made an application to protect castor oil as a geographical indication and to have that logo affixed to the products that they're producing. So what I always say to persons is, and my ministry had a number of outreach through different parishes in the island. And I have several bottles of castor oil at home, cold pressed castor oil, regular castor oil, you name it, castor oil with vanilla, castor oil with ginger, name it, I have it. But the distinctive thing about all of those castor oils is they're all home industry products. And every single one that I have bought, it says made and produced in Jamaica. If you look at the other ones that you see on the shelf, it's never made or produced in Jamaica. It doesn't even say bottled in Jamaica because they're all imported. So right now, what we do as consumers is not purchase those castor oils. And as I do, when I see it on a shelf in a store, I say to the owner, why are you selling this product? There's authentic, as Yentl says, once you're into GIs, you become rabid. So I said, why are you selling this product? It's not a Jamaican product. Why are you telling people this is Jamaican castor oil? It's not Jamaican castor oil. It's not going to make their hair grow. It's not going to do anything for them. This, you shouldn't have it on the shelf. And so now when they see me, but I must tell you, in one store that I did it, they started to sell a Jamaican product, castor oil. So it pays as a consumer to say to them, this is not an authentic product. Why are you in a Jamaican store selling a product that is well known in Jamaica and this is not Jamaican? But this is why we need persons to utilize what we have in our law and to make the application, register the geographical indication, get your logo affixed to your product, and then you have the authority to have other persons not refer to their products as castor oil because it is not. And then, because this is a legal obligation, when it comes to customs, because we work closely with customs and with law enforcement, because Jamaica is one of the few jurisdictions that actually has an arm of the constabulary force that deals with intellectual property law enforcement. So that's they know the area, and that like how you have the cyber crimes, you have a unit in the constabulary force that deals with intellectual property enforcement. So they can do a raid and they could take all those products off the shelf if there is a lawful geographical indication, because those products are not supposed to be sold because they're deceiving the public. That's it.
Thank you so much, and we've learned so much from you, Ms. Bellamy. I'm not sure whether Mr. Hunter has something to add to that.
Yeah, I do. I'm trying to bring up my 100% Blue Mountain coffee because there's a trademark. And if there is an infringement on that, then you are prosecuted. You are prosecuted, whether locally or internationally, you are prosecuted. My view is that you are robbing the farmers. That's my view. And the farmer's interest must be protected at all times.
Okay, thank you. So there is enforcement.
Yes,
and this
there
is
is
very,
enforcement.
very important to understand. Thank you. We have a question also from the audience, and I will read it for you. Given the concept of GIs, why is Jamaica rum registered as a GI when portions of Jamaica rum are currently produced outside of Jamaica?
Oh, no. I can speak to that.
Yes,
Because
please.
Jamaica rum was registered as a GI, and there is, like with most laws, I'm an attorney at law, by the way. So with most laws, when you implement a law, you can have a provision where there's a clause a grandfather clause. So example, when the Pharmacy Act was changed and Jamaican pharmacists were referred to as chemists, there was a grandfathering of certain provisions in the old law for the new law. So you allow persons a time period to become compliant with the new law because you don't want to penalize someone for what they were doing. And so you change the law and the next day, now they're illegal when they had started a process before. So you give them time to make everything come to Jamaica. So it is that period that we're in. So that's why. But it comes back also to the point that Yentel made. You have, not for rum, but for other products. Sometimes they say you have chocolates from all over the world and there's not one single cocoa tree growing in any of those places. What they would argue, Yentel, is the milk from their cows. That's what they argue. Because I've raised it. I'm like, how come you have chocolate and you don't have any cocoa trees? So.
Exactly. And this makes me also think about the way that GIs are not linked only to trade, but also to identity, to culture, to history. Exactly. Right? And probably in your work, but also I know Yentel in her research also looks at reparatory justice as part of affirming GIs in the Caribbean. So maybe I will just quickly ask if you all want to answer, but particularly Yentel, how do GIs help communities then to reclaim value from their heritage?
So geographical indications, as we mentioned, it's a legal tool that recognizes the producer community as the owners of the geographical indication product. And by extension, that means the economic benefits and the returns from the economic premiums that the geographical indication reaps return to that producer community. And then that producer community can decide how they reinvest those profits. So as I mentioned, there are numerous potential benefits, rural development, linked to the elements of sustainable development. But then also there's a whole new frontier that we can begin to think about, which is GI producer communities going to the bank to use their geographical indication as collateral. So the development potential is really exponential. And I'm really moved and motivated from this discussion today with Lily Claire heading up JIPO and Wayne heading up JACRA. And I'm really optimistic about the future. And I really hope that we can see several geographical indications being registered for Jamaica going forward. And if we think again about the context that we're in, on the list, we had St. Elizabeth thyme, St. Elizabeth scallion, Middle Quarters shrimp. These have already been identified from several years ago as possible geographical indications, and these are regions that have been devastated from the hurricane. So my perspective is that we should rebuild with geographical indications, build strong producer communities, and lock in that production, lock in the traditional knowledge, the traditional cultural expression, the ways of production, and guarantee that that community has an economic return to sustain itself and to build back stronger. And we were unfortunately exposed to the fact that, you know, we have to be realistic that we might be getting more hurricanes and stronger hurricanes almost every year. So we have no choice but to rebuild stronger. And I really hope that GI communities and us seeing GIs as assets can be part of how we're rebuilding our agricultural communities and producer groups.
Thank you so much, Yentel. I'm really grateful that you have mentioned the impact of hurricanes and the role of GIs for actually building back and building stronger. That is very important, and this is an absolutely fascinating discussion that I'm sure will continue even after this session. I know that I think Ms. Bellamy wanted to share something in relation to this, and I would really love to hear from you as well.
I just wanted to add to what Yentel had said, because the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office, which is an agency of the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, where we've actually been exploring the utilization of intellectual property as collateral. and the Security Interest in Personal Property Act speaks to the use of intellectual property as collateral. And the Companies Office of Jamaica has that registry where you can register IP as collateral. So that is an emerging area and one that is important and critical. And I think, as you mentioned, we need persons, because we, as the Intellectual Property Office, when the geographical indications was a new area, we went out and we met with 3 producer groups to encourage them to utilize the provisions of the Protection of Geographical Indications law. But it really is incumbent on farmers and persons who are producing. So students who have grandparents who are involved in this industry, if they can come together and come and have a discussion, and we can show them what they need to do. We can give them the framework. I'm sure Oriental will give them further guidance, because we are the ones who will assess it. So you will make an application to the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office, and the form to make the application is in the Protection of Geographical Indications law. So all of the steps are in the Protection of Geographical Indications law. So you can come together as a collective. It's important to have those persons come together because it can help you. And the thing is, if you have a group, let's say there are 5 of you in a neighborhood that are producing a good, that 5 can be the core group, and you can encourage and invite others to join with you. Because the thing with a geographical indication, you need to ensure it is renewable. So if you're producing baskets, in St. Elizabeth, they produce these baskets that they make them from thatch. You need to ensure that you're planting the thatch so that when you reap it, you still have more that you can go back. And the other thing with a geographical indication, there are several areas. It's not just the actual product. Persons will come to visit the site to see. People go to farms in Mexico to see the agave and to visit the factory to see how the tequila is produced. So you can carry someone and say, okay, this is a thatch. This is how we reap it, and just show them the whole production chain. So it becomes an attraction in itself. If you're producing a food, then you show them how you plant it, and then you have a restaurant where you offer them. So it's a whole circle. So it's not just the actual product. You have the services that can be associated with it, and you can protect all of those as a geographical indication. If you think of, and I mentioned this because he was on television preparing before the hurricane, Jake's. The restaurant was back up 2 weeks after the hurricane. So we know that Jake's is a hotel, but we also know that there's a Jack Sprat restaurant. So the hotel might not have been able to come back up on stream, but persons could go to that restaurant because they're getting fish from the fisher folk in that same community. So you see how one industry works closely with another industry to help the community survive. And that's what a geographical indication does. It's basically a village coming together to say, this is what distinguishes us from the other community down the road. The farmers up in Blue Mountain, this is what distinguishes us. Our coffee tastes good. The cloud is our cover. That's why our berries take longer to ripe. That's why you get that distinctive taste and aroma. Same thing. There are people in Jamaica who will only eat food that is done with St. Andrew thyme. There are other people who will say to you, oh no, the thyme from St. Elizabeth is better because it's a different taste profile. And that's what a GI is. It gives you the taste of home in a product that you can take off a shelf. I mean, this is something that all of us, it's right on our doorsteps. We just need to come in and make the application so we can protect our products and get the sticker. So then we can enforce it.
And that now that you mention actually the Blue Mountain coffee, I have a question from the audience in relation to that. So the person is saying, well, making reference to the trademark for Blue Mountain. How is the GI benefiting the industry versus the trademark? Also, can you explain the castor oil as a GI in Jamaica?
Mr. Hunter, would you like to speak to the coffee?
Yes, I would go for the coffee. Thanks. The trademark, as it is at this point in time, will offer the farmer, or should offer the farmer, a particular price for the commodity. As the regulator, though, we do not regulate, or should I say, set the prices, etc., which is something that they always cry about. It benefits the dealers who will sell these products at a premium price. So the communities benefit from what the dealers would obtain. Now, for example, we're now looking at a traceability system. In that traceability system, there is a component in the system that says that, let's say I sell to Lily Claire in Canada. Lily Claire is able to trace to see where my farm is. One of the benefit a farmer could derive from that is Lily Claire can directly deposit $10 in that farmer's account, or partner with that farmer to sell directly to Lily Claire. Those are some of the benefits of the trademark.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hunter. And you actually address even another question that we received from the audience on this distinguishing GIs and trademark.
Can I just add also?
Sure.
Because the thing with the trademark for the Blue Mountain coffee is it's a certification mark. So because of that certification mark, which JACRA is responsible for, it outlines certain considerations similar to a geographical indication that must obtain for you to be able to put that logo on your product. So if you don't satisfy those obligations, then you can't have the designation Blue Mountain Coffee. So as he said, if you are planting your coffee in Kingston, you could never get the designation of Blue Mountain Coffee because you don't fit the criteria that is established under the certification mark. So each applicant for a trademark for Blue Mountain Coffee has to prove that they have the authority to use that certification mark. So in addition to the trademark, so for example, I don't want to mention any coffee. I don't want to give any brand. So I'll use champagne. So champagne, I mean, it's a GI, but you have different brands of champagne, but they're all geographical indications. So they will have the GI designation on the bottles, but you will have different types of champagne. So the same thing with the coffee. There are several producers of coffee in Jamaica, but that certification mark is common to every single coffee that is an authentic example of Blue Mountain Coffee. So you won't get that mark, which is the equivalent of this GI, which is similar to the GI logo, that certification mark. So you can only get the certification mark if you satisfy the criteria.
Thank you. The time passes fast.
Yeah, Ramona, if I could just add to that, just in terms of for the person who asked the question, so we also like to make the nuance that so the trademarks protect the brand and brand identity, whereas the geographical indication protects that geographical linkage between the quality, reputation, and characteristics and the territory it comes from. So there's a nuance in terms of the things that Lily Claire mentioned earlier, the terroir, that's the French term for denoting the soil and the climate. So these factors that contribute to the product. So the geographical indication has that nuance in that it protects all of that, whereas the trademark is purely for branding.
Thank you, Yentel. So the discussion is so fascinating that we can go on and on. There are more questions in the chat from the audience. I will just ask one more in the interest of time, one that actually relates to data. And the question reads, is there any study on the actual financial benefits in either Jamaica or Trinidad and Tobago regarding the trade benefits of the geographical indications?
Okay, I'll speak to that from the point of view. There are not studies that I'm aware of. I know when we started out, there were 2 Italian researchers who were interested in tracking and tracing to see what happened with, for example, Jamaica jerk and Jamaica rum. But there are no published studies that I'm aware of, but there are published studies for other jurisdictions that shows the link between the geographical indication and the returns. So while we may not have any for Jamaica, there are international studies on the link between geographical indications and the economic benefit, and those are available. And for persons who are interested, they could perhaps visit the World Intellectual Property Organization website. There would be information there. And there's also an international group. Their name is Origin, ORI, capital G, capital I-N. So it's ORI, capital G, capital I-N, Origin. And they entire focus is on origin linked products, geographical indications, and there's tons of information if you go to that site. So while we don't have that data at hand, there is data and information available. And I encourage persons to put in GIs and search. Then you will also become passionate about it.
For sure, I'll try it. I will try it myself, even if I'm not a GI expert or doing any kind of work in this area. But you convince me. You all convince me, and I'm sure that those who have followed this YouTube masterclass stream also are very convinced. And I would like to conclude the discussion with a personal reflection and ask you all on the panel. If you could see one Caribbean, not only Jamaican, but one Caribbean product registered as a GI tomorrow, what would it be and why?
One product for the entire Caribbean?
For a particular locality in the Caribbean, but to widen the discussion from Jamaica, so we don't limit ourselves to Jamaica. But if you could see one product from the region registered as a GI tomorrow, what would that be and why?
I would still say cocoa, because of the intrinsic value of our cocoa. It's maybe because I am Jackro, but you don't need to advertise to sell the cocoa. What we need is that GI indication so that the local communities could reap the benefit from the premium product and bring and develop awareness around that product for sustainable development. Cocoa, it is for me.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Ms. Bellamy, and then we're going to end with our lecturer, Yentel Williams.
Okay, I'm going to cheat. because there's more than one for me. I think nutmeg from Grenada. I mean, when you go to Grenada, you can literally smell the spices. So I would say nutmeg from Grenada. I would say the Antigua black pineapple, because that is the only pineapple I've ever tasted that could compare would be our sugarloaf pineapple. So the Antigua black pineapple and sea moss from St. Lucia. There are so many products throughout the region, and the Kalinago craft from Dominica. They have a group of indigenous people in Dominica, and the craft is fascinating. I mean, it is a treasure. If you ever go to Dominica, you should get some of those baskets that they make. They are truly beautiful, and that is everything. 'Cause it's indigenous persons using local materials. So those would be my three outside of Jamaica.
I actually agree with both of you, and I also share Lily Claire's enthusiasm, let's say, for geographical indications. I can't just choose one. I wanted cocoa because I love chocolate. It's a fantastic product, and we ought to be recognized. It's almost like historic reparative justice. We ought to be recognized for hot chocolate, the drink everyone all over the world enjoys. We are the ones who have historically grown the beans, tended to the fruit, and that is what is now enjoyed globally today. I love honey as well, sweet things, all things sweet. There's so many Jamaica Easter bunnies on the list. One of our students is considering the Jamaica Christmas cake as a potential that's not on the list. Ganja, also for its medicinal properties, and Jamaica has a historic and well-known linkage to cannabis and ganja, hemp. But also Lily Claire mentioned one for me, which when Wayne said chocolate, I said, okay, maybe I'll choose another one. But the Kalinago craft, I think it's very important as a region that we, almost like an inventory, we make a list of our indigenous communities. So I'm really grateful that Dominica had already done that, but we can do that with our Rastafari community, a Maroon community, and other indigenous communities. Wayne mentioned, we are at risk of losing traditional knowledge. So the geographical indications, in fact, also offers us a tool to protect that linkage of quality, characteristics, and reputation with a geographical territory, whilst also recognizing indigenous knowledge, know-how, reputation. And I think I'll stop there. But as you see, the list can be so long. There's so many to work on. And anyone that wants to work on GIs, I'm happy to do so. At MonaLaw, we're happy to do so. And anyone that wants further training, please join our course.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, all. And I think the entire discussion, but also this last, your answers to this last question shows also the linkages between different areas of practice, industry, and fields of knowledge. Indigenous rights, communities, intellectual property, and GIs. And we do work in the faculty here. We do work in these areas. And we are linking through different experts with the practice, with the industries, and with the communities. And I think this is very important to also show how academia and communities and practice are linked. We work together. And on that note, I will wrap up here. And I do believe that this masterclass made it very clear, definitely to me, and I'm fully convinced that the GIs are a critical framework for innovation, for sustainable development. And we understand now that geographical indications and the course that we offer is about the law, but is also about linking people, linking products, linking communities, places in ways that is inclusive, in ways that are sustainable across Jamaica, across the Caribbean region. So thank you so much for joining us today for this masterclass. And I'm so grateful for our panelists, for our lecturer, and this has been such an excellent discussion. I'm sure we are going to continue, and we're happy to welcome you again at MonaLaw. I hope for the audience that we did attract your attention and that you think about GIs as a course of study, for your LLM studies, as a professional development course. And for any information, we are open for questions, and do contact us at MonaLaw Graduate Studies and Research Desk. We hope to welcome you at MonaLaw for our graduate courses, for our future events. And for now, goodbye, everybody, and see you soon.